Welcome to Publishing Options and Pointers, Unit 4. This is Dawn Brotherton with Blue Dragon Publishing. Today we're going to talk about some of the lingo that you need to learn when you're talking the world of publishing. Don't get overwhelmed. We're going to teach you a new vocabulary. You'll pick up things along the way, and that's fine. But what we want to do is start you with some key terms that you need to know, whether you're self-publishing, going hybrid, or traditional. One of the first things is royalties. Authors love to talk about royalties because that means money. Royalty is really the money that the author gets paid after the book is paid for. So, for example, for a self-publisher, it's the money that you've made after you've paid for printing the book. So if you print the book and it costs you $4 and you sell it for $10, your royalty is $6. In traditional publishing, we talked about that before, you're going to make about 9% royalties that you split with your author. Well, don't forget, those royalties come after if you got an advance, after your advance has been paid off, because the advance is an advance on your royalties. So that means if they gave you $1,000 to start with and you make $1 a book, you are not going to start making any royalties. You're not going to start collecting a royalty check until after you've sold 1,000 books. Copyright versus rights really confuses people. Once you start writing your story, fiction, nonfiction, doesn't matter. Once you've started it, you own that copyright. It is yours. What I highly recommend doing is if you are working on your story and then maybe you take a couple weeks off, when you start to write again, copy the file that you were working on and start typing on a new one so that you have a record of, a history of your writing, and it kind of shows how you've progressed. You will always own the copyright unless you're doing work for hire. Work for hire means somebody else paid you to do that work. And we talked about that a little bit before. If you are working for a company and they say, I want you to write this manual for me, and I'm going to pay you to write the manual, then that's work for hire. You don't own the copyright. The company owns the copyright because they were paying you to do it. All right. So the difference between copyright versus rights is you, the author, always own the copyright, but the right to do anything with that manuscript is what a publisher buys from you, basically. And they might buy it on a forever basis if you're not careful. But more typically, there's a limited basis. 5 years, 7 years. It just depends on what your contract reads. But the 5 types of rights they typically buy, like a traditional publisher, will be print, ebook, audio, movie rights, and foreign rights. This is something you'll want to look at in your contract and have your lawyer look at as well. And you may be perfectly fine with giving them all these rights. A traditional publisher will go for these normally. A hybrid publisher probably won't. It just depends on how big the company is and what they can offer you. They might not be dabbling in the foreign rights world. They might not have a translator or have a connection overseas who might be interested in buying the foreign rights. That's between you and your publisher. Obviously, if you're self-published, you keep all those. Here's the website where you can go and copyright your story. You're going to need to wait until it's almost finished. The other thing is, so this website is great to do, and you should do it. I highly recommend it. It's like $55 or something like that. It's filling out paperwork. And then you send them a copy so it's on file. But you don't have to do this to be copyrighted. As soon as you put it on paper, or in the computer in this case, you own the copyright. This is just a protection in case somebody sues you or goes to court. It's another layer of protection where you can say, no, look, I went the extra mile and I did this. So you don't have to do this, but I recommend it. Let's talk about the parts of the book. You might not think much about this at all, but when you are talking to a printer and they start asking you questions, then you're going to feel really silly if you don't understand what they're asking you for. So pull out a book, go get a book off the shelf. I'll wait a second. Okay, just a second. So when you're looking at the book, open up your book and look at the page numbers. Sometimes they're at the top, sometimes they're at the bottom. That part doesn't matter as much. You can go through your bookshelf and see what's most common to you. Most of the books I see are on the bottom, but that's not a hard and fast rule. They can be centered, or they can go back and forth, left to right. If they are not in the center, your page number needs to be on the outside of the page. So when it's on the right side or recto side of the page, that is always an odd number, and it is on the far right side, closest to the outside margin. When it's on the verso page or on the back of the page, it's on the far left side, and those are always even numbers. That's a sure sign that you can tell it's a self-published book if you pick it up and the page numbers are wrong. Sometimes people put fancy markings there, or at the header they might put the chapter title in there as well as the page number. You can get as fancy as you want. And if you use Microsoft Word, you can actually set this up for you. It's a little bit of a pain when you first do it, but once you get the hang of it, it's not bad, and it'll save you so much hassle. Chapter 1 always, always, always needs to start on the odd side of the book, on the right side, recto side. Always. Other chapters, you can do it either way. Some people always start the chapter on the right side. Depending on what type of book you're writing, that might just be a waste of paper. So as long as chapter 1 starts on the right side, you can go back and forth with all the rest. The chapter heading also needs to come down a little bit on the page, especially for fiction. It should come down a third to probably not quite a half. You need to look at it and see how it looks on your trim and with your type of book. But it needs to catch the eye that, yes, we're into a new chapter. You don't always have to have a chapter title, depending on what type of book you're writing. You could just call it chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. That's fine. Or you can have a chapter title and you can have a subtitle. That part is up to you. For a nonfiction book, I would recommend actually using a title to highlight the topic you're going to cover during that chapter. You don't also have to put chapter 1 pronouns. You could just put pronouns if you want to. Your choice, back and forth. Again, I would still recommend that you drop the header down. It probably doesn't have to go down quite as far, maybe just a little bit, maybe a quarter of a page. But go ahead and look at some of your favorite books. If it's a workbook, it might be all the way at the top. So it just depends. For your copyright page is always on the left. It's always on the even page number count. And it will cover things like, it'll say copyright, and you do not have to use the symbol, copyright by your name and the year. Even if you did not file for a copyright officially through the government, you can still put that copyright notice on your copyright page. But always put your name, your legal name. So if your real name is William, but you go by Bill, you want to copyright it with William. It will also have, it may, if you're self-publishing, it may or may not have an address. I would never put your personal address, but you might just want to put your city and state. That's usually required. If you have somebody that designed the cover for you, you might want to give them credit by putting the cover design. If you are writing a fiction book, you might want to put a blurb in there about, names are changed, those kind of things. There are very generic statements. Look at on the inside of some of your other books. No reason reinventing the wheel. Pull some of those statements that you like. If you're printed in the USA, put you're printed in the USA, because to me, that is a selling point. But if you are using a foreign printer, obviously you can't do that. There is a difference between acknowledgement versus a dedication. The dedication usually goes in the front of the book. It's always on the odd side, on the right side. And if and it's usually short. The dedication is not very long. The acknowledgement goes into the back, and then you can get into a lot more detail. Thank your college professors, thank your beta readers, your editor, whatever you want, but that's usually in the back. If you have endorsements, especially with a nonfiction book, you can put those right in the front. They're a selling point. When people pick up a book, they look at the cover, they flip it over and they look at the back. So if you want to put your best endorsements on the back, it doesn't even have to be a full sentence. It could be a chunk of a sentence. But then if you want to have more, put them in the front of the book. And they will start on the right side or the odd page count. And you can list a couple of them there. But again, keep them short because people want to get to the story. I have been so frustrated when I've picked up a book, especially if I get, the download 10% free first to see if you like it. And all I'm doing is going page after page after page of endorsements. Okay, you're telling me how great you are. Show me your book. So be judicious when you're putting in endorsements. So let's talk about ARCs, advanced review copy. Sometimes when you're first starting out and you're trying to do some marketing, people will say, send me an ARC. ARC means advanced review copy, and it's for marketing. You can have these printed before you do all your final editing, but you want it to be fairly close. But you also want to mark it that it is an uncorrected proof. One of the things about ARCs, and you might have seen them, here's an example on this screen. If you look down at the bottom, it talks about the marketing and publicity, where you can buy it, what the different ISBNs, whether it's ebook, hardback, paperback. It lays all that out. It still has the blurb on it. If you've seen one of these, and if you've purchased one, you should not have purchased it. These are not books for resale. These are advertising purposes only and should never be resold. As a matter of fact, they should be marked. Now, one of the things that I have done in the past, because I didn't want to spend money printing a bunch of ARCs and then have to do printing, is I got my books as clean as I could get them, and then I printed 10 or 20, and then I bought stickers that I designed that say advanced review copy, not for resale, uncorrected proof. And I stickered some of my books, and then I gave those out. Because what you don't want to do is be giving out a bunch of books and then have those people turn around and put them up on Amazon as a copy. That is not allowed. Again, these are the books that you will send to magazines or newspapers to have them review. It should also have a way for them to order the book. So you might want to give these to libraries. If you go to the American Library Association conferences, what they're giving out typically are these advanced review copies. They are trying to get to libraries to read the book, to like them, and then purchase the book to go in their library. They don't want them to just pick them up for free at these conferences and build their library on that. So when people ask you for an ARC, that's what they're asking for. Well, I hope this got you started on some of the lingo. If you have any more questions, or if you've heard of a term and you're not sure what it is or why it is, please drop me an email or go to the Facebook page and post a question for me, and I will do my best to answer it.